Hey, good afternoon. Merry Christmas. Cheers. On the whiskey, I got some whiskey for Christmas, so yeah, having that today. Anyway, hope you've had a good one. It's been a long time since I've done any of these videos, and I wanted to get myself up to date before I go charging ahead too far and totally lose track of what I've done. So now there has been a few updates for those that are following me on Twitter or elsewhere. You probably noticed there's been no updates on Broken for a while. That's because I had a lot of things going on at one point. I had a number of projects, and my attention wasn't on Broken, and I just felt the need to get away from it for a bit as well. And while I was doing that, I was playing games, which I sort of go through these phases of playing games. And earlier in the year, I'd upgraded my Game Boy, modded it with the IPS screen, so it's nice and shiny and bright. And yeah, I was playing that, and I've always liked Game Boys. I really like the hardware, and stumbled into GB Studio, which I can't remember if I talked about in my last video. Can't even remember when my last video was. But I found the GB Studio, Game Boy Studio, which allows you to make games for the Game Boy in a very, very interesting way. It's all drag and drop. There's a lot of restrictions that are still in play, obviously, because it's Game Boy, and the Game Boy Studio actually exports to ROM, which is really cool. So, uh, that's why the engine itself is restrictive. It's working with the restrictions of the hardware. So, yeah, I thought I'd have a little play with this Game Boy Studio. It was kind of unintentional in, I didn't mean to go any further than just to have a little play and see what it's about. But then it got me thinking, because I felt a bit guilty about leaving Broken on the side and not really doing anything with it. Also, I wasn't in the mood to just pick up Broken and carry on with it. And also, I just had other things going on. But I was enjoying GB Studio, at least the challenges of GB Studio. Making a game for the Game Boy is actually quite challenging. It's quite restrictive. And it's super satisfying when you resolve issues and get around problems. So that's where I was about, I guess, a month ago now. And I actually decided, well, seeing as I'm in this GB Studio and I'm enjoying it, excuse me, and I've got a game to make, why not make that game in GB Studio? Obviously, I'm going to have to downgrade it a lot in terms of presentation. I've got to make it work on a Game Boy. But the restrictions of the Game Boy, and I've done this before in the past, when you restrict yourself, you come up with really creative solutions, creative ideas, and actually it kind of forces you to get on with things. And that's what's happened. I actually got on with the game. I got on with the story. Really, I've tidied up the story now, 100%. It's it's tight. Actually, putting the story into the game was interesting. I think translating something that you've got on a text document into a game, and having some text pop up in game is very different. Let me rephrase that. Having some text and words that you've got on a document that read like a script is very different once you put it into a game, when you've got things going on in the game. So it was cool, kind of doing that side of things, getting the storyline tidied, and right at the end, even when I had the script finished, I put a little twist in there, which I hadn't originally planned for, and I was like, oh, actually, this makes things a bit more interesting. Let me just see where I am at. No. Bear with, sorry, I've got to pull the projects. Yeah, okay, cool. I'm sure that's going to do stuff. I'm self-hosting my Git repository on a Raspberry Pi, so it's a bit slow pulling content down sometimes. So yeah, I got this storyline tidied up. I had a real think about what it is I wanted to do, or what challenges I wanted to put in for the player, and came up with some interesting challenges for the player. And all this is just cemented where I want to go with Broken, the Unity build now. And I think actually I might just start again with the Unity build instead of trying to retrofit what I've done into it, if that makes sense. I think start with a clean slate and know where I'm going a bit more now, and I've got a reference point. So it's been really, really beneficial actually building this game in GB Studio. And I'm not done yet. I've still got more to do. I've still got to finish the game up. But I thought I'd give a quick sort of peek into what this game's all about now. Also, I've changed the name. I was always going to change the name of Broken. I still will for the Unity build. I can't have it called Broken. So I like the idea of Broken Mind because you're playing this guy in a coma. I've got these pains going through my head that keep shocking through. So if I keep pulling funny faces, it's that. You've got your wife who is by your side while you're in your coma, and she's going out of her mind trying to deal with it, and not having you around, and sort of stumbling into this weird cult community that promise the ability for her to travel, as I call it in the game. And traveling in the game is near a near-death experience where this cult is doing this crazy science, fringe science, where they think they can put you into this death state, and you can sort of see loved ones for a few seconds, and then they bring you back to life. And they're looking for volunteers and subjects essentially to trial out their medicines and their poisons. And this wife stumbles into this cult through the game. So you've got her, and then you've got the third character, which is your daughter that you're trying to find in the island, in your coma world. She's been kidnapped, and you're trying to get her back. So there's 3 characters. There's actually a 4th character. I don't want to say too much about that 4th one because that is the twist at the end. And yeah, that came to light the other day when I was writing the story in the game. I was like, oh, but what if this happened? So I put that in, and I quite like that. It does mean I've had to go back and sort of rejig the story a bit, but that's cool. So this is Gameboy Studio that you can see on the screen. This is what I've been building the game in. As you can see, there's quite a few scenes. All these blue boxes are scenes. These are what the player walks around in. Some of them have got placeholder art in, some of them haven't. Another fun part of making this game actually is I feel a childhood fantasy and got a Game Boy camera, and I've been running around locations capturing footage, pictures rather, for the game, which is really awesome. And I really kind of like the glitchy 8-bit effect, and I've had to even cut them back even more. Take out details, shrink them, because of the tile limit, which I won't get into. There's videos on YouTube that talk about that in more detail, but you can only have a certain number of unique tiles per scene, and if you just go straight out with the photo from this and put it into your game, you blitz it, and when you try and launch it, the image is all screwed up on your Game Boy. So that's been interesting, and it kind of I've kind of created this nice sort of style, with the focus point and the background just being black, and I think there's a few more of those. The pillbox, I've got to go back to where this pillbox is and take that photo. That was actually an existing photograph that I ran through an 8-bit converter, which, it looks Game Boy-esque, but when you compare it to the actual Game Boy photo images, it's not as good. So I'll go back and capture that pillbox. It's only up the road. Anyway, and I really wanted the photographs to be in this game just to add that sort of level of realism. This one's terrible. The one thing I've noticed, and taking the photos with the Game Boy cameras is a challenge in itself, a fun challenge, I've got to say. But I learnt a lot. I went to the Isle of Grain, which is a very unique isle in Britain. Very derelict, sort of desert-like. There's some weird buildings, really cool stuff, big power stations. This is a power station, as you can just about tell. There's 2 towers and some smoke coming out. But what I realised with the camera is you have to be up close to your subject to really sort of be able to pick any detail, because clearly you've got very little in terms of pixels on this thing. So if you're trying to take long distance shots, you get a very, very vague image, and that's what this is. The abduction one, I really like this one. Drew this one all by hand. It wasn't a photograph. surprisingly. You know, there wasn't a UFO just floating around. There's someone being abducted. But yeah, I had loads of fun with the art side of things. Drawing out the bunker again, just making sure everything was sort of like angled properly, and I could recycle the images and just add details. I would do this completely differently actually going forward, and I would have, I think. So the way it works at the moment is like you've got an image for the sort of the bunker, and as you move through the bunker, you move through the images. The problem with that is I've got lots of duplicate images, and that obviously takes up space, and space is very valuable, especially when really you should be looking at 32 kilobytes. I'm up to 270 kilobytes, which is fine because I'm running on one of these ROM carts at the moment, but I will be getting this on some other cartridge at some point. So I think going forward, what I'd rather do is have like 4 or 5 of the images, and then use some sort of text-based system to work out where you are in that map and display the right image. So then I'm not duplicating these images all over the place, which would reduce the overall size. So yeah, this was cool. I just used a sort of I traced the original like forward-facing view of another point-and-click style game, and then just obviously drew my own art on top of it. But it works quite nicely. GB Studio, by the way, has a number of different game types that you can handle. So top-down 2D, so you sort of Zelda, platform like Mario, adventure, not really sure, shoot 'em up like R-Type, I guess, point and click, like, you know, Broken Sword and those type of games, and a logo, which is just image. Actually, I wonder what adventure actually is. But I think I've covered all of these, so there's a lot of different game styles and types to play in here, which is cool. There's some crazy puzzles, which you got to go find clues and answers to through the environment. Newspaper clipping, or hand drawn. Again, thinking about tiles and trying to keep those limited. A safe which you need to unlock. The nightmares. I've only got 2. I've got 3 nightmares in there at the moment. The lake is where you start. It's your first nightmare, and the second 2 come in later. I think I feel like I need one more, just to even it out a bit. Because the first nightmare doesn't actually feel like a nightmare because you sort of jump into it rather than enter it. These 2 you sort of enter through choice. And the nightmares, once you complete them, you get a bit of story from your wife's point of view, which again it's this sort of thing that I need to take forward into Unity for the Broken build. Need to take forward for Broken, the Unity build, because this really sort of helps tell the story and keeps things progressing. But shut up, let's see what it looks like. I was sorting out the splash screens, so yeah, they might be a bit cringe actually. I'm not sure I'm going to keep one of them, which was going to be for my website. I think I might just do the Thieving Pixels splash. While it's loading on there, get it loading on the Gameboy as well. I don't know how that's not very clear, is it? Let's see. Oh, it's so cool to. Yeah, that's the splash I'm going to get rid of. Yeah, I'm definitely getting rid of that. You can just you jump to the menu. But yeah, it's really satisfying having a game run on hardware. I know, like my PC's hardware and my games have been running on that, but having it on a Game Boy, again, it's like a dream come true. You can't really see it, and also let me just see. Okay, yeah, because I've just put the row on there, so the load state's gone on that one anyway. I'll just do the first part, I guess. I won't go too far. So you wake up with your daughter screaming in bed, and you can go explore the bedroom. And oh yeah, okay, because you go out. Some of this art I photographed on my camera of images on my laptop, so I need to take a. I don't know how I feel about this actually. So this is a screenshot from X Files. It was the Fox Mulder's sister being abducted. It was from that, and I edited it to the point where I don't think it's recognisable unless you go sort of out your way and compare the images. And even then, like, you know, obviously her eyes are glowing, which they're not doing on the X Files one. I would ideally like to shoot that again on my camera with, you know, my own setup. As I say, I don't think it's like infringing on copyright or anything like that, because it's not really recognisable. But also, I do know it's not necessarily my work. This just a picture of a lamp, and it looks like sun flare. The sort of things you can do with the Game Boy, adjusting the brightness and mess around with delays a bit. So yeah, your daughter's been abducted. Strange portal, as we all know. You can step through the portal, and this is basically your first nightmare. You just wake up at the bottom of a lake in a car that's filling up with water, and you've got to escape. Yeah, oh yeah, one of these quirks with the Game Boy that I wasn't expecting was you can't. Oh, there's a couple of things actually. Well, there's lots of things. You can't have random numbers. The Game Boy can't generate random numbers at all. Well, it can. It uses like keyboard input or something, like the player's input to create a random number, which it is random, which is cool. But I do wonder if with these fish are sort of moving randomly, but like does my input affect them? I haven't gone that far. I didn't dig deep into the documentation. I just found the way to get the random number. If you touch the fish, you die. I did want a timer here to force you to get moving, but this bit's hard enough without it, so I'm not going to put that in. Oh yeah, so the other thing that I really miss, actually I didn't realise just how much I use them, but arrays. Like you can't have arrays on the Game Boy, not in your typical sort of JavaScript sense at least. So every number has to be a variable. You have to call that number. You have to do whatever, then put it back. So yeah, but I'm not really paying attention. Yeah, so it's things like that I guess you take for granted these days. But yeah, I had to figure out. Right, let's have a look. What was challenging about that scene in particular? Yeah, so okay. It's cool having this engine, but it gets really like messy with the nesting sometimes. This isn't too bad, but actually, like once you've got like statements going in and in, nesting inside of each other, it can get a little bit confusing. But hey, the price you pay for making a Game Boy game when you can't write in assembly or whatever. But it's things like this, you animation. So we got the ability, or where was it on? Was it on update? Yeah, on update. We create a number of options too. and we apply it to a local variable. Where's the actual random bit? I saw that. Oh, there we go. Yeah, we set it to a random number 1 or 2, and when 1, go left, X tiles, or F2 go forward, go right, 1 tile. Why was that challenging? That wasn't challenging. I can't remember. I think just sort of picking up any engine's challenging to begin with, because you've got to work out what you can and can't do and how things are done, and read the documentation at the same time. So there's just, even though like it can look really simple, there's still a lot of complexity going on. All my actors, I need to get rid of some of them. They're not being used anymore. Like this really cartoony style animation I had at one point, and I was like, no, I don't like it. I want it to look more grown up. I kind of like this thin, dark look to it all. Anyway, yeah, so I'm not going to go for Gameboy Studio. There's far better videos for that, and people have got far more time for it. But long story short, like, making the game, it's close to actually being finished now. I might add another nightmare. I might leave it. I'll see how I feel. I've got to work out audio. That's the next thing, like making music and sound effects. There's an inbuilt piano thing you can use. I was looking at this. So you got this duty 1, 2, and that tallies up to sound effects that you can drag over here. Saying, I know this is going to take way longer than I think it will. Creating the music, especially with chip tunes, you've got to be careful that it doesn't get annoying. So yeah, that's going to be the next massive part of this game. Actually, the last final piece, really. Continue without saving yet. Yeah, I think everything else, as I say, is pretty much there. There's some bug fixing, tweaking to be done on the nightmares. The story's all in place. I've got the save state now, where you can save your position and your achievements. There's multiple endings. There's 2 endings that you can discover. So hopefully there's a reason to come back at another point once you've completed it. Then I've got to get it over to someone to play test and see how long it actually takes to complete. Make sure the challenges aren't too hard. There's some clues spread around the island, which I do worry a little bit that I may have made them a bit too difficult, but we shall see. UFO, got to have my broken ring in there. So that is me for the last month. Caught up now on my devlog. I'll finish this game up. I want to get it on cartridge. I've been looking at options for that. Get it all printed, get a box, get manual, make it all look nice. Maybe sell the physical hardware. At least have one physical version. I might put it on Twitch. Itch rather. So people can play it through the browser as well. You don't need a Game Boy, although it's far better on the Game Boy, far more enjoyable. And then I guess sort of end of January, February next year, I should look at picking Broken for backup for my Unity build, that is, and get on with that. Actually, quite looking forward to it. I think once I got these final pieces in place, going back to it, and I'm going to take a similar approach actually when I go back to it. If depends if I start from scratch or if I try and retrofit it. I think I will start from scratch, but I think I will just stick to the basics and get the basics in. I did get carried away at one point. Like there were going to be items that you could find, that had these unique powers which were in the Unity build, but on the Game Boy thing it just didn't translate as well, and it was actually getting really. Like I'd have to go out of my way to create scenes where you could use these items. Like I don't know, pausing time. Well, you've got an item that pauses time, but where are you going to use that on the island? what's it going to do? Not a lot really. In 3D, it's slightly different because you could use it to access certain areas. You know, if there's a waterfall coming down, you could pause time, water stops, and you go underneath. So things like that, yeah, I cut back. I mean, things like that I've been doing on my Unity build, which I've taken a while. Like I've got the whole transport system in my broken build for Unity, where you can create that portal, and you can walk into your daughter's room, return items, take items out, and it's really cool mechanic. And I wanted to use it, but I think I'll leave that to the end. Just get the fundamentals in place. I mean, it sounds obvious when you say it out loud, and I think I've been saying it on other videos as well. You know, every time I sort of convince myself I'm doing the basics, I'm doing the fundamentals. I'm not really, because it's not. Well, maybe I'm a bit, but not enough. Anyway, yeah, cool. That is it for tonight. Thanks for watching. 26 minutes. That's not too shabby. Yeah. Watch this space. This game's coming out on the Game Boy. Catch you later.